Okay, welcome back once again. We ended on this, so I want us to look at the different methods of quantification, and then after that we come and look at the different terms that we use in quantification. So quantification methods, there are around 4 methods, or we have 4 methods of quantifying medicines. One is when we use the consumption, or we can call it the logistic method. And then morbidity method, we have adjusted consumption, and then service level extrapolation. Let's start with consumption method. Consumption method uses historical data on the use or consumption of drugs in the past to calculate the quantities of drugs that will be needed in the future. Consumption data is normally adjusted for any stock out periods, usually first choice, and requires a reliable records of consumption. So with the consumption method, you look at how have people been consuming medicines, and then how many people have been coming in a month. So if people have been coming in on average in a month, you are going to look at how much of which condition was most common and how many people came presenting that condition. So you are looking at the previous data to decide for the future. What you used previously, what happened previously, you are using it to plan for the future, to plan for the coming months, to plan for the future of the hospital, to plan for the future of the facility. Okay, so look at the data, the consumption data. In the first lecture, I talked about accuracy. You are looking at making sure that you have accurate information, you have accurate data, and that accurate data is the one you need to use to determine the quantities that are required for the facility. So after knowing what consumption method is, let's see what are the advantages of this method, that is the consumption method. Consumption method does not require details on morbidity data or standard treatment schedules. It is useful for facilities, for example, hospitals, where health problems are numerous and treatment is complex. So you find that it is useful for different facilities, different types of health facilities, health centers. It is reliable if consumption is well recorded and stable, and not likely to differ from the current supply. And then differs, identify stock management problems. It helps to identify stock management problems. In case you had days out of stock, consumption data can tell us that we had days out of stock. In case we had any theft or any breaches, we are able to recognize with our consumption data. And it is a reliable process. You can rely on it. It does not disappoint if you have accurate information, if you have been recording well and consistently. It will not be the method that will disappoint you to either have oversurplus or have stock outs, having days out of stock. Okay, so let us see what are the limitations of this method. What are the disadvantages of using this method? Consumption method assumes the current usage pattern with continuous. Like it assumes that it will be continuous. Like if people consumed this month maybe 30% of the medicines, it assumes that even the second month or the coming month they will consume 30%. So there are situations where we shall have more turnover, like people are coming so many, having the same conditions, and then we used statistics of when people were not coming when there were many. So you find that such cases and such situations we may have, it may not favor, consumption method may not favor, because the patterns of how people come in and out of the hospital cannot be the same. But for it assumes that it is always continuous, it is always the same way. And then data are for drugs used in the past or currently being used. Data are for the drugs for the past, not the ones you are thinking of bringing. And then consumption data may be accurate, reliable, and comprehensive. Must be accurate, reliable, and comprehensive. If it is not accurate, we shall quantify wrongly. If it is not reliable, we are not going to quantify right. If it is not comprehensive, we shall also not quantify right. Data must come from a system with a relatively uninterrupted supply and a full supply pipeline. So things should be done right. And if anything happened, or maybe we had emergency orders, this specific method may not favor us. Consumption data will reflect use of drugs, which may or may not have been based on rational prescribing. So we find that, yeah, patients have been coming, we have been recording, we have recorded accurately. However, the medicines were not prescribed right. The dispensing was not done right. So based on this information, we are still going to procure for things that were not done right. And it assumes that it will continue like that. However, if things are polished and training is done or given to health workers, things may change, and we shall have overstocked or understocked. Okay, so that becomes a disadvantage of consumption data. And then we say that it is unreliable if they have been long stockouts or wastages or losses, new or rapidly changing services. In case of any of this, we see that we shall have issues with whatever quantities that we are looking at. Okay, so the next is let us look at the different steps, how the method is used. 1, prepare the list of medicines to be quantified. Determine the period of time to be reviewed for consumption. Enter the data on consumption and stock out for each medicine during consumption review period. And then calculate average monthly consumption. Average monthly consumption is total consumption for all the month that we recorded for, divided by the number of months reviewed. Okay, so if we have reviewed for 2 months, put the total consumption divided by 2. If we have reviewed for 4 months, you indicate the total consumption divided by the 4 months. That is average monthly consumption. As simple as that. You need that as your stage 4. Without average monthly consumption, you may not be in position to appropriately use the consumption method. So we continue with our steps. We say that in case of stockouts, account for them giving adjusted average monthly consumption. So with adjusted average monthly consumption is equals to the total consumption during the reviewed period divided by the consumption review period in months subtracted from days out of stock and then divided by 30.5. So when we look at a month approximately has 30 days. However, some months have 31 days, with the exception of Feb. Okay, so we find that other months have 30 days or 31 days. That is why we have 30.5. So if in the month of March we had 10 days out of stock, 10 days out of stock. We had all the 10 days we didn't have medicine, and we're telling patients to go and buy. So we shall put here where there is days out of stock, we shall put 10 divided by 30.5. So after we get the number here, we are going to see that the consumption reviewed period, how many days are we reviewing, how many months are we reviewing for? If we are reviewing for 4, so I'll have 4 minus the value we shall get here. And then what was my total consumption divided by all this other amount. As simple as that. That is in case we had days out of stock. In case we didn't have any days out of stock, excuse me, you only calculate for average monthly consumption. You only focus on average monthly consumption. You only calculate average monthly consumption. Another step, calculate safety or buffer stock needed for each drug. So we see that safety stock is the adjusted average monthly consumption. This is adjusted average monthly consumption times the lead time. The lead time is a specific period that is given for the drug to be delivered. The time that you are waiting for the drug to get delivered is the lead time. Okay, so if you are expecting the drug to come or medicines to come in a 10 days time, so from now to 10 days, that becomes the lead time. Then the other step is calculate the quantity of each medicine required in the next procurement. So how do we calculate for it? We have our values here adjusted. This is adjusted average monthly consumption. We have the lead time. We have the procurement period. This is safety stock, SS. And then we have S1 and then S2. Okay. So we have step 7, adjust for expected changes in the consumption patterns, and then adjust for losses, compile decentralized quantification if applicable, and then estimate cost for each drug and total costs, compare total costs with the budget, and make adjustments. That's all what we need to know with the consumption method. With morbidity method is another method of quantification. Is defined as the frequency of a common health problem. How common is the disease in this society? How common is it that these people in this specific area suffer from malaria? We have Asian and other European countries. You find they may not have malaria, but in Africa we may have it. So in such cases, we find that when they are quantifying for Asian countries, they are going to rule out malaria because it's not there. And in other words, it's not common or completely not in that area. But when we come to Africa, we have to quantify for it because it is always there. Okay, and maybe the frequency of people who present with it are also higher. So see, this method uses data about the disease and the frequency of their occurrence in the population, the frequency of their presentation for the treatment, and then the forecast quantity of drug needed for the treatment of a specific disease based on the projection of the incidence of those diseases. And then we have the best approaches for adjusting the budget requests, and then used to estimate needs for a new program or disaster situation. Like when we had COVID-19, we see that the facilities had to adjust. The facility were looking at how many people are suffering from this, how many people are affected. You find that the whole nation, the whole world was affected. So they were able to quantify a number of oxygen cylinders, a number of vaccines to vaccinate the people against the disease. And then as time went on, you find that the quantities have reduced in the facilities. They do not quantify in the same way they quantified for the corona medicine, COVID-19, in 2022, in 2020, in 2021, and in 2019. So that is how the morbidity works. You see, you look at the condition present in the community, or that is can maybe an outbreak in the community, and you look at how do you handle it. And not only the outbreak, there are some conditions that are common in specific communities. So they look at how many people present with it, how many people in a year can we get, how many people in a month do we get presenting with this specific condition. That's what morbidity tells us. So let's see the advantages of morbidity method. Does not require medicine consumption data where it may not be available. Promotes systematic basis for reviewing medicine use and rational prescribing, especially in primary healthcare. And then motivates reliable and accurate morbidity recording. So those are a few you can check out for more in different other sources. Limitations of morbidity method. We see that morbidity data not available or accurate. We don't have the information of how many people are presented with the disease. And even if we have, it is not accurate. Okay? The standard treatment guidelines may not be followed when we are doing this specific quantification. So it may be a limitation. Requires accurate information on population and morbidity, as well as clinic attendance. Then we say that uses a standard treatment guidelines to project needs. Most complex and in time, takes time. You need to calculate, you need to do a number of things, and then consuming for the 4 methods. It takes out the role of all the other 4 methods. Assumes that the incidence and or facility utilization remains the same in the forecast period as historically. And then estimates only treatment requirements, does not. It only estimates treatment requirements and does not cater for the losses or wastage. So you find that that makes it a limitation. So let's look at another method. Another method of quantification, we have adjusted consumption. Used when consumption and morbidity methods are unreliable. Extrapolates from consumption data from another region. So we find that it uses another region's information for them to determine what they can have. So if we are starting up a new facility in a given area, we are going to compare that facility with a nearby facility to see how much do we need for our facility based on their data. We use their data to determine what quantities we need. So that is adjusted consumption method. Like you adjust the consumption or the calculations or the records of a specific facility in order to fit what you want. Use theirs to make yours so that you know what you need to order, what is necessary, what you need to procure based on which specific conditions are common in the facility. So that is adjusted consumption as another method of quantification. And then it adjusts for losses. In case of days out of stock, it is able to adjust for the loss. So let us look at the fourth method, which is service level extrapolation. Service level extrapolation estimates budget needs. and then utilization of service level and facility type. And then we see that the average medicine cost per attendance. So when we look at service level extrapolation, it is estimating what is needed in the facility, what cost is needed based on the type of the facility. If it is health center 2, it will look at what health center 2 utilizes. What are services? We say that health center 2 only offers outpatient services. Health center 3 offers both outpatient and inpatient. Health center 4 also inpatient out and then surgery bit of it. So you find that if it is health center 2, health center 2 may not need lignocaine or other medicines that we use for anesthesia, because they do not carry out even minor anesthesia in health center 2. So that is like you look at the services you offer in your facility to determine how much of the quantities or what do you need, which medicines have you selected, and how much population can your facility cover, or is it meant to cover. That is service level extrapolation. However, it has also disadvantages. We see that variable facility use and then attendance, of course, the number of people coming, and then we may underuse the facility or facilities function, and then treatment patterns may vary. And then we see that there is issue with the supply system efficiency. Because of the type of the facility, the supply system may delay, may have issues along the way, it may not be efficient. So that is with the service level extrapolation. However, here we have methods or steps for morbidity method. We have looked at 4 methods of quantification: morbidity method, consumption method, and we looked at its steps: adjusted consumption, and then service level extrapolation. So let's appreciate the different steps for morbidity method. So morbidity method specifies the list of health problems, and then that's the first step. Specify the list of health problems. If it is malaria, put malaria. If it is COVID-19, put COVID-19. If it is if you're preparing for diarrhea, cholera, dysentery, and the rest, put them. And then establish the list of medicines to be used for the problem based on what is available. Establish the list of medicines to be used. If it is malaria, you need antimalarials. If it is COVID-19, you need vaccines, or you need immune boosters like vitamin C and the rest. And we also had other medicines we used like Covidex. So you list it out. After you know the problem, list the medicines that manage the problem. And then establish the standard treatment guidelines, including the dosage and duration of the treatment. If you're working with adults, or if you're planning or quantifying for adults, look at how much of the medicine do adults need. After that, collect a frequency data for the health problem to estimate the number of people who need treatment. Estimate the frequency, collect or find out the frequency, how many people need treatment. Calculate the quantities of medicines required for the estimated patients based on the dosage and duration. Okay, you need to know if it is if I am managing malaria and I'm dealing with adults. If I have 10 adults suffering from malaria, we know that the dose of malaria should take 3 days. And if they are dealing with the artemether-lumefantrine, meaning they have to swallow them, of course if they are solid dosage forms, they'll have to swallow them four tablets in the morning and 4 in the evening. That is after every 12 hours for 3 days. So if you have 10 times 3 days, those are 30 days. Yes, times 8. Okay, so we have 30 times 8, and you are able to know how much of the doses or how much of the tablets do I need to have in place. Then adjust the quantities for losses. And adjust quantities for loss. That is step 6. We adjust for any loss. So here we see we are calculating step 3. Quantity of medicine specified for the standard course of treatment, and then number of treatment episodes of a health problem in a given period of time should be equals to the total quantity of medicines required for a given health problem for the given period of time. Then we have an example. Amuru district has an adult population of 300,000 people. 10% of these adults every year report a case of pneumonia. Pneumonia standard treatment is amoxicillin 500 milligrams TDS for 1 week. Okay, so calculate the number of adults expected to have pneumonia in the next year. Calculate the quantity of amoxicillin that should be ordered for the whole year. You can do this rough work somewhere and try it out. How do we calculate? Since we know the number of the people of the population, and 10% of that population is able to have this condition in a year. And then the treatment guidelines have been given to us. So we need to know all that in detail. So this is the solution. I hope you tried it. A number of adults expected to have pneumonia. You see it is 10 times 300,000. We get 30,000 people. Quantity of amoxicillin required per patient. We see that 500 milligrams each capsule of amoxicillin. We have the one that has 500 milligrams and the one that has 250 milligrams. For this specific case, we took the one, or we are considering the one which has 250 milligrams. That is why we have here 2, or there is a 2 here, multiplied by 3 times 7, giving us 42. Quantity of amoxicillin to be ordered for the whole year. We see that we multiply the 42 times the 30,000. We get 1,260,000 tablets. 260,000 tablets. So here let's compare between consumption method and morbidity. Does not require detailed morbidity data. The other one does not require medicine consumption data. Relates only the rate of use and doses, and does not take into account if there is rational use based on standard treatment guidelines, and therefore rational use of medicine is taken care of. Better for a wide range of items, motivates staff to keep reliable morbidity records. Simple calculations and faster, and then more detailed and time consuming, and then it is not that accurate. Okay, so we see that the first choice of procurement forecast, or the first choice for quantification, because what we are doing, we are forecasting for the procurement. We are determining the quantities and costs, as the first step of procurement is quantification. So we see that it is the first choice. People would like to use the consumption method to quantify and estimate what they require in their facility. Okay. Alright, so we see here prepare action plan for quantification. It involves 2 phases, each with the subtasks. The first phase is the preparatory phase. Name the person responsible, form a working group for coordination, agree specific objectives, choose the quantification method, list tasks, estimate budgets, and obtain resources. list health problems, and then train staff in quantification method. So the first thing, you need to prepare for quantification. You don't wake up one day and carry out quantification. You don't just wake up to quantification. You have to plan for quantification to take place. Okay, get enough skilled, competent people who know what they are going to do, how they are going to use the data available, and if the data is not available, what are they going to use, which other method and options can they use. That is what you need to put in mind and into consideration. So we have the second phase. We see that the quantification phase, data collection, quantification, costing, and then reconciling the budget, calculate for final quantities, feedback results to managers for placing orders and allocating medicines. We see evaluation of quantification process and making of necessary improvements. All right. So in case of any improvements you need to make, in case of anything that you need to make, that you need to clarify more on, reconciling budget is like, if whatever we have quantified is beyond the budget, how do we reduce? What do we need to reduce so that it aligns with the budget we have or that we need? Okay. Calculate the this is a illustration of how a stock card looks like. However, we shall look at the stock card in another lecture and see how we can work on a stock card. Okay, we shall look at a stock card in another lecture, not today. All right, so that is all for types of different types of quantification. For different types of quantification, I thank you so